Didn't get paid very much, but we loved what we did.
People would fight and
people would fight. You know, when I played in the pub when I was 16,
His beginnings were modest, just like those of many other artists of his age. And he worked hard to gain his current position as one of the most recognized and successful entertainers in the world. There is more to this quirky singer than meets the eye, hiding behind his expensive spectacles, his skill, and his showy outfit. However, this artist is more than meets the eye. However, Elton has lately disclosed something that we had all been concerned about from the beginning of his existence. His life is filled with a lot of mysteries that are only now beginning to come to light. Is there a significant secret that the former bluesology star is keeping? Watch the video and find out. And do you know the legend of Elton John? Leave an A in the comments if you do. Early life and career. Looking back at Elton's life and work, we can see what makes him tick. If you're like most people, you might be surprised to learn that the Elton John we've known for years is nothing like the real thing. Stanley Dwight and Sheila Fairbrother gave birth to their son, Reginald Kenneth Dwight, on March 25, 1994, in Pinner, England. Even though it's trite to say, Elton had a deep love for music from a young age. He even trained himself to play the piano at the young age of 4, which is rather remarkable. A scholarship to a young program at London's Royal Academy of Music was his due, as his apparent skill and enormous potential for greatness shone through. Given his apparent talent, one would think his parents would be more encouraging. Regrettably, Elton and his parents did not experience this. There was a lot of tension and animosity between him and his Royal Air Force father, Stanley, when he was a kid. Despite his parents' divorce while he was a teenager, they came together due to their disagreements about his future. Elton aspired to be a pop musician because he was enchanted by the music of the early rock and roll era. That was not something that his parents, who are of British descent, agreed with. Elton, his son, quit school when he was 17 years old to pursue his love, and his father was particularly heartbroken about this decision. Despite this, he became a member of a band called Bluesology, which had a role in the formation of his well-known stage name. At a time when Elton John and Bernie Taupin were not well known, he responded to an advertisement for a writing position with Liberty Records in 1967. He was hired for the position, and he rapidly established a collaboration with Taupin. The next year, the two individuals started writing songs for other performers who were signed to the DJM label. It wasn't until 1969, when his album Empty Sky was released, that Elton got his big break as a vocalist. Even though it featured performances by Elton and Bernie, the CD was not successful in gaining popularity. To his good fortune, his first single, Your Song, would be included on his album of the same name, which was published in 1970. Almost immediately following the release of Your Song, several songs such as Crocodile Rock, Island Girl, and Benny and the Jets succeeded in reaching the top spot on the charts. In the 70s and 80s, Elton had a string of successful albums, such as 1973's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and 1975's Rock of the Westies, instantly rising to prominence after releasing a string of hit singles in the 1970s. He was also a household name because of his electrifying live performances. For his lavish shows, Elton frequently donned fantastic, extravagant costumes and spectacles, which the audience appeared to find extremely entertaining. Because he wasn't a sex symbol like Bowie, Mark Boland, or Freddie Mercury, he began dressing more comically, he explained in an interview. Since he intended to spend the next 2 hours engrossed in the piano, he may as well make a statement. Performing a duet with Kiki Dee titled Don't Go Breaking My Heart, Elton made a triumphant comeback to the song charts in 1976. Along these similar lines, he decided to return his focus from music to the English soccer team he co-owned. You might remember that this was also when Elton came out as bisexual if you were around at the time. Being bisexual in the 1970s was, as you might expect, not easy. He was frequently made fun of and stigmatized because of this. Thankfully, the rumors about him quickly subsided, and he returned to music with a bang in 1979 with the release of A Single Man. Even though he didn't have a ton of 80s big singles, a few of his songs nonetheless managed to do well. His most famous songs were the ballads Little Jeannie and Empty Garden, as well as Hey, Hey Johnny, an homage to his late buddy John Lennon of the Beatles. He went on a new path in the 90s, collaborating on songs with Tim Rice, a writer. The Lion King, an animated smash success from 1994, featured their collaborative score, For What It's Worth. Elton won a Grammy for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance and an Oscar for Best Original Song for the film's soundtrack. Can you feel the love tonight? Following their work together on the musical Ada, Elton and Tim were awarded the Tony Award for Best Original Score in the year 2000. In the course of this period, Elton was awarded more accolades. In the same year that he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Queen Elizabeth II bestowed upon him the title of Commander of the Order of the British Empire. This honor was bestowed upon him. The Queen bestowed upon him the title of Knight after some time had elapsed, which ultimately led to his being bestowed with the title of Sir Elton John. After a short period, Elton fell into a condition of depression, even though he cherished the attention, fame, and affection that his music got. During the summer of 1997, two of his closest friends, Gianni Versace, a fashion designer, and Princess Diana, were both missing from the world. Both of them were his closest pals. To show his respect for the princess, he updated his well-known song Candle in the Wind and also founded a charity trust in her name. The trust received every dime that was made from the song since it was contributed. This was a very audacious statement to make, especially when one takes into consideration the enormous success of the song, which earned Elton another Grammy and sold more than 30 million copies in that particular year. In the years that followed, he continued to compose new songs even as he entered the final phases of his lengthy career. The year 1975 saw the publication of his first autobiographical novel, which was titled Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. Within the year 2006, he penned The Captain and the Kid, a novel that was an expansion of his previous work. His collaboration with Leon Russell on the album The Union, which was published in 2010, resulted in the two of them embarking on a tour together. In 2013, T-Bone Burnett released his 31st studio album, which was named The Diving Board and was released to the public. Burnett was the producer of this album. Wonderful Crazy Night. His 33rd studio album came out in February 2016 and was met with mostly excellent reviews. Because it included Elton John's band, with whom he hadn't worked in 10 years, the record was well received by many. The reason Elton was still so well liked was because of his incredible live performance, even if he didn't perform as much. On October 12th, he was one of several performers who joined Ozzy Osbourne, Paul McCartney, Eric Clapton, Stevie Wonder, and others to commemorate Queen Elizabeth's 60 years as monarch. Later that year, Elton released his autobiography, Me, after the release of a biopic he co-wrote with his spouse in May 2019. Following the conclusion of his farewell Yellow Brick Road tour, which he announced on January 24, 2018, he would be retiring from the road. According to him, his priorities have shifted, and he now wants to prioritize spending time with his partner David and their children. We are all aware that Elton isn't one to avoid arguments, and that includes his parents. This list unfortunately includes even his closest relatives. People report that Elton and his mother, Sheila, were feuding for 8 years. In June of 2008, Elton terminated the employment of 2 long-term employees who had strong connections to his mother, which caused an unpleasant hiccup in their relationship. When Elton insisted that his mother likewise end all relationships with the guys, his mother reportedly became quite upset. When she flat-out refused to give in to his absurd demands, tensions rose, and Elton accused his mother of favoring ex-employees above her son. Apparently, in response, she made derogatory comments about John's husband, David Furnish, calling him that F-word thing you married. This set the stage for a full-blown conflict, which culminated with Elton abruptly stating his hatred for his mother and cutting off all communication. Rumor has it that this was their final public conversation for years, except for the rare media outbursts. Fortunately, the two were able to mend their strained relationship, and in General 15, Elton sent his mother a huge bunch of flowers to celebrate her 90th birthday. The rumor mill has it that Elton stayed mum about their reunion out of deference to her. However, her Instagram photos and supportive public comments hinted that the two had already resolved their troubled relationship by the time she passed away in 2017. On the outside, Elton appeared to have it made, but his time in the limelight was everything but, as he was embroiled in a plethora of scandals. Here are just a few of the many scandals that rocked Elton's career over the years. Now we can move on to the ones that almost derailed his success. His interview reaction was the first thing that caught my attention. Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys was interviewed by Elton back in 2016. Elton ended up sharing some uncomfortable stories about his emerging sexuality as a teenager after Tennant asked him about it when he first learned he was homosexual. His careless word choice allegedly exposed the fact that he yearned for any form of closeness, even if coerced, while his classmates boasted about their relationships. Also, he mentioned that during treatment, his therapist asked whether he had ever been abused. He responded no, but he secretly hoped he had been so he could learn about relationships and have someone to talk to. People may laugh about anything, but joking about intimate abuse is not one of those issues if you want to be viewed as sensitive and tasteful, so you can understand the outrage that followed his remark. His second offensive remark concerned Ed Sheeran's weight. Ed is signed to Elton's Rocket Music if you know anything about the pair. To be honest, Elton took great pleasure in offering him career guidance and helping him develop as an artist. But in 2016, when questioned about Ed's year-long hiatus, Elton stated, "He was so omnipresent." I said, "Ed, even I'm sick of you," and suggesting that the break had been a good one. "Get out of here." Then he did it. He and his girlfriend just returned from an amazing trip to the Far East, where he gained a significant amount of weight due to overeating. I warned him not to gain weight when he traveled since, like myself, he tends to do so easily. He made a strong return, but he sacrificed everything for the record. The majority of internet users found his remarks to be unneeded and rather hurtful, thus they weren't particularly fond of them. Thirdly, David Guest, a music producer, and the legendary Liza Minnelli were married in 2002. They may have encouraged Elton to crash their party because of the widespread belief at the time that the show-off visitor was homosexual, and because Liza's first husband, the songwriter Peter Allen, was gay. The exact reason why is unknown. Liza Minnelli is a heterosexual, and Elton supposedly said he wanted to purchase her spouse. Some say that Elton thought the prank was humorous, but Liza's husband didn't and even supposedly ordered a hit on him. This was asserted by Guest's closest companion and personal bodyguard on the eve of his 2017 death anniversary. It seems that Guest had paid him $25,000 to arrange for Elton's death. In 2003, just days before the planned assault, the Beat Buddy confessed to putting everything up, but had second thoughts and convinced Guest to scrap the whole idea. At last, we have the least contentious scandal, which concerns Elton's choice of child's name. The fact that famous children often have unusual names is not shocking. X is the name of a child that one famous person possesses. Apart from that, a lot of renowned celebrities give their children names that are borderline outrageous. Although Elton chose not to follow Gwyneth Paltrow's lead and name his children after fruits, he did name them Zachary Johnson, John Levy, Elijah Joseph, and Levon Furnish hired Daniel to furnish John's home. You could be asking what's so strange about Elton's name if you're not familiar with his songs. The fact that he named them after his most famous songs from the 1970s is the most notable thing. Though, my goodness, they aren't strange names, so no one would wonder. Probably wasn't something you knew about Elton. Now that we've covered his latest revelations, let's review a few more facts about Sir Elton that you might not have known. Trivia about Elton that you might not have known. While we're on the subject of names, you probably already know Elton's given name. Did you know, though, that Reg Dwight was his stage name when he initially started performing? I bet you were unaware of that. A site that offers information on band names claims that it wasn't until Elton met Bernie Taupin that he decided to use a more suitable stage name than the one he had been using earlier, which was Reg. The year 1972 was the year that he officially changed his name to Elton Hercules John, which is his present full name. His name was a blend of things that he felt profound or cool, and while it was a little weird, it was very appropriate. He contends that the name Elton was taken from Elton Dean, who was a member of his previous band, Bluesology. who played the saxophone. The name John was only a tribute to his friend and mentor, Long John Baldry, as well as the third name, which is not a name that is commonly given to individuals with affection. As one may anticipate, Hercules did not originate from the demigod hero that is depicted in Greek mythology. Elton, on the other hand, took it from a horse that had a role in a British sitcom called Steptoe and Son. There is a possibility that Elton did not choose the name because he thought it was adorable and humorous. Instead, it turned out to be a surprisingly prophetic choice. Elton's life and relationships are full of mysteries that are only now beginning to be revealed. So what mysteries are hiding in this star's life? Keep exploring. Elton's relationships and personal life. Surprisingly, and maybe unbeknownst to Elton, Steptoe and Son may have been a sitcom that was both entertaining and successful, but the reality behind the scenes was a very different tale. Wilfred Bramble, the star of the sitcom, was a troubled and hard-partying individual who had been suffering from substance abuse as well as his thoughts and feelings around his sexuality, in a manner that is comparable to how Elton's innovative and colorful performances and music were able to conceal his emotional troubles for a considerable amount of time. Freddie Mercury's sexual orientation is something that everyone is aware of, and this is related to sexuality. When they were at the height of their careers, the world was not very accepting of people who did not identify as heterosexual, so it is perhaps not that surprising that Freddie and Elton discovered each other. Aside from their sexuality, they were also two of the most captivating and quirky entertainers of their day. One of the sources claims that the two individuals were not only friends, rather, they were the best of friends who had ever invented drag queen identities that they used to refer to each other at times. The name Sharon was used to allude to Elton, while Melina was the name given to Freddie. It is interesting to note that Elton was one of the first persons to discover that Freddie had been diagnosed with AIDS. This is because the buddies were associated with one another so closely. Even though he had to witness his buddy suffer through the agony of passing away, he remained faithful to his friend and maintained this secret. Even more tragic is the fact that Elton had to see the deaths of numerous of his friends due to AIDS. As a result, he was one of the few individuals who were aware of what was about to happen at the time and knew what was going to happen. Therefore, it should not come as a surprise that Elton takes satisfaction in the fact that he is now operating and giving to several philanthropic organizations that are dedicated to AIDS. It is a commonly held belief that Freddie himself had a very favorable impression of Elton and continued to hold him in high regard right up to the very end of his life. Throughout 1991, it was discovered that Freddie had gone away on the 24th of each year, having stated that Elton was at home on Christmas Day of that particular year when a friend came to visit him and gave him a pillowcase. This was a unique and memorable experience for him. Not only did the pillowcase contain a painting by Henry Scott Tuke, who was one of his favorite painters, but it also had a letter from Freddie that said, "Dear Sharon, I thought you'd like this. Melina is the love of my life. I wish you a wonderful Christmas." In the final days of his life, it was clear that Freddie had spent some time looking for the perfect Christmas present for his friend. This was obvious in the fact that he had completed his quest. If you are thinking about Elton, what is the very first thing that pops into your mind? Considering that you stated eyeglasses, you may have spent a considerable amount of time watching his performances. When you reach the homepage of Sir Elton John's website, the first thing that meets you is almost half a dozen pairs of glasses. This is because the brand is so closely associated with elaborate eyeglasses. Considering how much he enjoys wearing eyeglasses, one may assume that he has been struggling with a significant eye condition for some years. However, it is not even close to being the case. Elton started wearing spectacles for no other reason than the fact that he wanted to, long before he needed them. The fact that he was just 13 years old at the time. He paid respect to Buddy Holly by wearing spectacles with horn rims. In the beginning, this tribute was solely focused on his appearance. This well-intended copying, however, turned out to be terrible for his eyesight with time, to the point that he found himself telling his fans to never duplicate his appearance again once he realized the consequences of his actions. In his own words, however, ophthalmologists have dismissed his allegation, suggesting instead that it is possible that he just had declining eyesight throughout his adolescent years. Do you remember when we discussed how Elton had contemplated recording a song in honor of Princess Diana? To tell you the truth, this did not appear out of thin air. Since the 1970s, Elton had been a friend of the royal family. It wasn't until 1981 that he finally introduced himself to the people's princess. During the 20 minutes that they spent dancing together at Prince Andrew's birthday celebration, he got the opportunity to meet Princess Di, and they became friends almost instantly. They continued to be close friends until 1997 when Elton and Gianni Versace published a book called Rock and Royalty, which was intended for coffee table collections. The book had photographs of members of the royal family in addition to photographs of male models in semi-naked poses, which shocked Diana, who finally put Elton in a state of deep freeze. There are reports that Diana even refused to communicate with him for many months, and she did not begin to warm up to him until the murder of Gianni Versace later in the year. Unfortunately, their newly formed relationship would not survive for very long because Diana was tragically killed in a vehicle accident while they were together. While he was performing at her burial, Elton continues to think of her as an angel even to this day. During the time that has passed, he has maintained his strong friendship with her family and even played at the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in 2018. Now, let's discuss a little bit about the marriage that Elton has. In the beginning, he was married to Renate Blauel from 1984 to 1988, respectively. Elton came out as homosexual when his marriage to his wife ended, and in 2005, he started a relationship with David Furnish, a Canadian advertising professional. In 1993, the couple had their first encounter. However, because it was against the law for them to be married at the time, they continued to be in a relationship for several decades until they eventually sealed the knot in December 2014. 1 year after the couple tied the knot, David was promoted to the position of Chief Executive Officer of Rocket Entertainment, the umbrella company that he had established to oversee all of the management, firms and other smaller businesses that had developed around Elton for the decades. In essence, he manages Elton in a practical sense, designing a logo for him and even crafting the very first long-term business plan that Elton has ever had. Therefore, it appears like David is the one who controls the show and pulls all of the strings linked to Elton's job. This is even though Elton may be the primary provider for the family. Throughout his career, Elton has endured a great deal of setbacks. Nevertheless, there was one obstacle that came dangerously close to taking his life: dependence on something. If you knew Elton back in the 1970s, you would be well aware that he pursued narcotics with the same level of enthusiasm that the rest of the world did for his music. To tell you the truth, it certainly does not come as much of a surprise when one considers the enthusiasm that he exudes while performing in his lavish outfits. The unfortunate reality for him was that this insignificant whiff here and there turned out to be the beginning of something far bigger than him. During the early 1970s, Elton was a flashy performer who could command the attention of a whole stadium. However, when he was not performing, he was often quiet and bashful. To get out of his shell and make up for the things he lacked, he turned to narcotics, which ultimately led to an addiction that lasted for 16 years. Throughout a significant portion of the 1970s and 1980s, he claimed that he lived his life through a haze that was motivated by substance abuse. However, the white substance was not the only addiction that Elton chose to indulge in. During an interview in 2010, he revealed that he had said, "This is how bleak it was. And then I would stay up, smoke joints, and drink a bottle of Johnny Walker. And then I would stay up for 3 days. And then I would go to sleep for a day and a half. And then I would get up, and because I was so hungry because I hadn't eaten anything, I would binge and eat something like 3 bacon sandwiches and a pot of ice cream. And then I would throw it up because I had developed bulimia. And then I would go and do the whole thing again." It was almost as if his life was coming to an end right in before of his eyes, since his existence had become so hopeless and had been reduced to a haze of drug sniffing. Elton revealed, to everyone's surprise, that in the early stages of his career, he had a very limited understanding of narcotics and was so ignorant about them that he did not even attempt to experiment with them until his manager brought them into the recording studio in the early 1970s. In the beginning, he stated that the substances did assist him in overcoming his shyness and made him more open. However, It also became the factor that closed him down since during the final 2 weeks of his substance usage, he spent his time in a room in London, using and not coming out. Even throughout the AIDS pandemic in the 1980s, the rising anxiety over the then unknown sickness failed to limit his substance usage. Due to this, there was not much that could be done to convince him to abstain from his addiction. In an interview, he discussed his denial, noting that he had friends and family members pass away around him, but he was unable to get himself to stop the life that he was living, which was one of the most horrific aspects of addiction. In his discussion of the circumstances that ultimately led him to the light, Elton revealed that it was his encounter with Ryan White, an American adolescent hemophiliac who became infected with HIV as a result of receiving a blood transfusion that was tainted, that served as the push for him to finally begin his journey toward sobriety. He mentioned that he had the good fortune to meet Ryan White and his family and that he had the intention of assisting them. Nevertheless, they ended up assisting him in a far more significant way. During his recovery from his addictions and the establishment of the AIDS Foundation, Ryan served as the catalyst that helped him. In the 6 months that followed Ryan's dying, he got sober and clean, and he has remained sober and clean throughout the decades that have passed since then. When Elton first became aware of Ryan, it was in the year 1985. After visiting him, he ended up developing a strong relationship with his family. The tiny kid went away on April 9, 1990, and he was even present at his bedside when he passed away. Elton served as a pallbearer at his burial and performed Skyline Pigeon at the event, which was attended by 9,500 mourners during the time of his passing. When the news that Elton had overdosed became public in 1975, it was not much of a surprise because he had been snorting a significant amount of marching powder at the time. It would not be the first time that he came dangerously close to losing his life due to narcotics, unfortunately. During an interview, he said that he would experience an epileptic seizure and become blue. People would then discover him lying on the floor and put him to bed. 40 minutes later, he would be snorting another line. As time went on, it gradually evolved into an addiction that was consuming him from the most fundamental level. In the year 1990, he was fortunate enough to be able to overcome his addiction. Especially considering that he was carelessly snorting throughout the years that corresponded with the early stages of the AIDS epidemic, Elton expressed his gratitude that he had managed to escape all of this without suffering any personal injury. He remarks that when you take a drug, you take a drink, and you combine the two of them, you will believe that you are unbeatable. I emerged from this experience devoid of HIV. In the whole universe, I was the luckiest guy alive. After years of struggling with substance usage difficulties, notably white powder, which may have caused severe epileptic seizures, Elton ultimately entered rehabilitation in the year 1990. This was after he had been battling these issues for some years. Soon after he became sober and was overjoyed to get a second start in life, he established his philanthropic organization to assist in the battle against AIDS. The Elton John AIDS Foundation was established in the United States in 1992, and since then, it has raised more than $565 million to assist HIV/AIDS projects all around the world. Elton also provides financial assistance to several other charitable organizations and artistic groups, including the Globe Theatre and the Royal Academy of Music, in addition to his foundation. Now that he has been sober for 3 decades, he proudly displays his sobriety badge in 2015. He even took to Instagram to announce the 25th anniversary of his sobriety by posting a photo of a cake with the number and the slogan, "One day at a time," on it. Unfortunately, addictions never go away completely, and he acknowledged that he still suffers from his previous addictions since they continue to have a hold on him. At the very least, I still get dreams that I have taken narcotics and that I have it up my nose. These dreams are very real and quite disturbing, but at least they serve as a wake-up call. I at least have these dreams twice a week. Although he is now clean and sober, and the father of 2 boys with David, Elton continues to struggle with addiction, but not only to chemicals. In 2013, the year that his second kid was born, he came dangerously close to losing his life due to an incorrect diagnosis of appendicitis. As a result of this, he was forced to reconsider the decisions he had made in his life. On the other hand, this time it was the incessant traveling and the continual appearances all over the world that had gone out of hand. Yes, that was a sign. I can't get enough of working. During an interview, he revealed that he was essentially causing injury to himself by traveling so often for no cause at all. He also made a hilarious statement about how he was well known for his inability to subsist with only a pair of shoes, one CD, one bouquet, a car, an ornament, or anything else. Additionally, he stated that he had always gotten away with everything and that the fear that he experienced in 2013 served as a wake-up call for him. Which of these facts about Elton did you know a little bit about? Post your thoughts in the comments section below. We appreciate you watching. Play the video that is currently playing on your screen to see further videos that are fascinating. In addition, be sure to ring the bell, like, and subscribe to the channel so that you are alerted whenever a new video is uploaded.